Swansea wrestling fans. I'm your host, Ben Allison, and you are watching Wrestling Republic's daily broadcast. Today, we have a bunch of news to talk about ahead of tonight's edition of AEW Dynamite, including Saraya leaving AEW and Mina Shirakawa signing a contract with them. We've also had a variety of ins and outs at TNA Wrestling, specifically backstage. We've had a major reshuffle there. We're going to get into that. And Orlando wants some WWE and UFC events in the next 5 years. It's going to be a big time for Orlando in sports entertainment and combat sports. But to discuss all of this, I need a great panel, and indeed I do have one today. Let's kick things off with the man who lost on Sunday. He's out of the quiz tournament. How are you, Clark?
I'm stoked to be here. I'm good from the loss. It's all good. I'm stoked to see my opponent again. He's a good friend of mine, and much respect on the hard-earned victory. I love how you put me on the spot for that, but I'm fired up to be here. It's Wednesday, and you know what that means. We're going to break down some professional wrestling, and nobody likes that as much as I do. So let's talk about it.
Good news indeed. I actually spoke to somebody who was watching the quiz the other day, right? About the reaction and the controversy in the comments that you reacted negatively. The comments were that what you were saying was really positive and everything, but you could tell by your body language during it that you were gutted. And that was why the comment was said.
I'm a competitor. And at the end of the day, I left it all on the field. You know, it's not like I wanted to lose. I respect where it's due, but, sometimes I did my very best to lose gracefully, but, I might hate losing a little bit more than I even like winning.
Well, I mean, listen, I'd be upset if people weren't upset at going out in this tournament. And of course, the next game is David versus Chaos this Sunday, 8 p.m. UK, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific time. I think that bout is going to be really, really interesting. And both men are very, very confident, especially David. But also joining us today, we have the man who won the quiz the other day and also went to Monday Night Raw in Glasgow this week. How was the show, Sol?
Hey, boys, good to be here. Yes, first round winner of the Wrestling Republic King or Queen of the quiz, and I'm happy with that statement. Okay, this is going to annoy people, but honestly, for somebody who attended Raw in person and sat through the whole experience, minus the endings, I had to catch my train, it wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth the money I paid, which was three figures. No offense, I don't think, for even the seats I were in were actually class seats for the money they were. Still, though, I think of the people down below me who paid not even double or triple more than me. I don't think it was worth it. For me personally, the highlights were Cody and Cena's promo, Punk's promo, Jey Uso's entrance, and El Americano versus Dragon Lee. Besides that, I thought everything else was pretty subpar. I think it just really speaks to me as a fan that I just don't like the WWE match types. I thought the thing about the Lee and Grande Americano match, it was just a fun.
Oh, I think Sol has just broken up for a second. That's right, Clark, right?
Frozen to me.
Yeah, okay, cool. Just checking it wasn't my end, but I mean, Sol, a lot of people I think do agree with you, and the prices for this UK tour have been unbelievable. I remember when I saw the prices, I was like, it's a joke, but for you to say it wasn't worth it, that does say a lot as well, because people paid a lot.
I just thought, yeah, I know, and I just honestly think it wasn't really worth my time or money. Honestly, I only went because Cena was announced. I mean, that's
wow.
Well,
that's why
the time. Come on, the time.
Time seems a bit extreme. I'll take the money, but
yeah, the money's fair enough. Time.
I mean, I was just, it just wasn't for me. It's not my type of wrestling.
You had no fun?
I had fun.
I have fun at bad wrestling shows.
Here's the thing. I'll tell you what. I had fun with the people around me. I had fun with the people around me taking the mickey out of it. And then when the Rangers and when the Rangers and Celtic titles got announced, that was the most entertaining thing because
that was hilarious.
It was great.
Yeah, that was great. I mean, Clark, you actually didn't see that, I don't think, because in America they don't show it, but it was during the commercials they announced it. and you couldn't see the crowd. You could only see the graphic.
I saw
and you could
just
just hear
viral
the
videos
crowd
of it.
going nuts at it. It was
Well, and then Punk mentioned it in his promo, so I knew
Yeah.
something was up when he
yeah.
did, and I loved the way he handled it. That was classic. Like, can't pick sides on this one. Like, it was golden.
Like, that's the thing. I just don't think that the matches speak to me in that thing. I thought I thought Lee and no fuck. Who is it? Penta and Braun Breaker was disappointing. I thought it was pretty
Wow.
poor. I thought it was pretty poor on my part. It just, I don't know what, because I've seen Penta before in AEW and I've seen him go all out and do crazy things that really entertain me, but I just don't think he had the showmanship. There was nothing of like the whistle he would do of Alex, with the glove and throwing it off. There was none of the showmanship to that. I just thought it was a bit of a letdown for me personally. I can understand if people loved it and enjoyed it fully. I fully get that, but for me personally, that was easily an 80 quid show. It should have been. It shouldn't have been what I paid for it. It should have been. It's an under £100
Okay.
experience.
I don't disagree with that at all. I think your concerns over the price are ridiculously fair because the prices were ridiculous. There's no doubt about it. And the point which you bring up, I don't necessarily think that's necessarily a WWE thing. I think that's the fact that it was a WWE weekly show. It wasn't a pay-per-view, it was a weekly show.
Yeah.
And the main parts of a weekly show, as we know on WWE TV, and it always has been for years, is the promos, right? They're usually the highlights of it. There's exceptions to the rule, but in general, the promos are the highlights of those shows. And it's a lot of money.
It's really interesting. Last time I was on with Chaos, we had this discussion. He was talking about going to a house show and just how much better that was for the price of admission when it comes to this UK tour, because you're going to get 10 matches. And that makes sense, right? It's almost like the difference between the two. It's interesting, but obviously Glasgow being the most logical choice. So, right, it's TV taping or, you know what I mean? Or travel. So
I get that, but I mean, for me, it just didn't speak to me. Like when you paid that amount of money for that, and you go and see they're selling shirts for like 50, 60 quid for a t-shirt, and you're kind of like, yeah, I don't want to get anything else. Like, I don't want to.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to dosh out the cash that I normally would for shows that I'm excited for. I had more fun. I spoke to a prominent Scottish wrestling promoter as well, and the promoter described it as a glorified house show as well. Like,
I don't want to be a little harsh here, right? We did have a Cody Rhodes and John Cena, great promo.
Yeah, the promo is what sells it, but
I
other
don't
than that,
think
you're there for the match.
CM Punk.
Yeah, that, but I want the matches to be entertaining as well. I want to be entertained. I remember that match was good, or that match was good.
Title.
Oh, the only matches I remember of it is someone coming out to be announced of Gulf of America.
El Grande Americano.
Well,
it just wasn't for me.
Next time I go to Welsh Wrestling, I'll certainly be hoping that I get to see John Cena show up. But no, I do agree with you. So the price is ridiculous money.
Pricing is
Fernando says as well, I think house shows are generally better overall these days. I mean, house shows are really fun to go to. Me and Chaos went to one last year. I had a bit too much fun. I can't remember
I was still
most of
awesome
the night,
too, by the way. Big ups, Fernando. Thank you. You're still awesome too. Much love.
But now let's not move on. We haven't got to the first topic yet, have we? Saraya has left AEW. Bit of a big news story today, but out of the gates, I want to say this. This might just be the most respectful anybody has left a wrestling company in quite a while, especially AEW. In fact, I think this is the most respectful anybody has ever left AEW. Saraya has come out today, says, hey, I love AEW. I love Tony Khan. It wasn't a personal thing, but I was watching the product and it was so good. And I just didn't really know where I'd fit in if I came back. And I didn't want to take any spots away from anybody. Mercedes wanted a feud with me. I wanted that feud as well. But other people were getting opportunities and I just couldn't see where I'd really fit in and get the time. So I decided to ask my release and they gave it to her. Honestly, dead respectful, but the question is, what is next? What are your thoughts, Clark?
Pure class. So I can't lie to you, Ben. When I first saw the headline on the graphic, I thought Saraya mutually left AEW, and that meant AEW also left AEW. So I was completely thrown. But once I realized that wasn't the case, once I realized that was not the case, I went full Bob Seger, turned the page. And I think we're going to see the return of Paige That's all I'm saying. What a classy way to leave a wrestling promotion. I think it was inspiring what she did there. People were very critical of some of the work, and that doesn't matter. To overcome an injury that she suffered, come back with the attitude that she had, and to exit the promotion with class. Her time in AEW served a purpose and should be appreciated. Absolutely. It's one of those ones that looks better in hindsight than it may have in the present. And I'm excited for whatever it is that Saraya or Paige does next.
I mute my mic again by the second time then. But the bottom line is, Clark, to your point, she came into AEW. She put tons of people over. She said she didn't even want to win at Wembley Stadium, but Tony Khan forced her hand because he was like, you deserve this moment. And she did deserve this moment.
Pure class.
And if we obviously ignore the stuff outside wrestling, right, we don't know all of that. But if we purely base it on, what she did in that company, she did so much good stuff in that time and fans were so critical of her. Sure, the match quality wasn't as good as you'd hope and as good as it was for her, a decade before. But it was still good stuff. She was still entertaining. I do agree she's probably, I don't think she's got necessarily that much time left at the top of her game in professional wrestling. But if it's just a short retirement run, I think she undoubtedly deserves that in the WWE. What are your thoughts, Sol?
So Saraya, I think, even in her short amount of time there, has done a lot of impactful things for AEW. Let's go in order. So obviously, return match against Britt Baker, who obviously Britt has wrestled her mum in the past. So it's kind of an interesting thing to see the same woman wrestle a mother and a daughter over a period of years, which is kind of insane to think about. Obviously, forming the Outcasts, while maybe not the most loved fact everybody, it was technically the launching point for Timeless Tony Storm, who's now one of the most over women in wrestling. So she has that to her accolade of being the launching point for the biggest women's star we have today. Winning the AEW Women's Championship at Wembley Stadium in front of over 80,000 people as well. For a British wrestler especially, iconic to have that under her accolade and as well to be a former AEW Women's Champion. Of course, as well, recently Harley Cameron. She's been someone who's essentially launched her career as well, and now is a very popular woman in AEW's division. But let's go on to Saraya in general. If this is the end, let's say this is it. Saraya's done. No more, no WWE return because people will just flip flop and like people in certain companies because they can't be bothered to change the channel. Um, she has deserved everything that she has been offered and given. Right. Let's look at it like this. I've spoken to people that have wrestled for the Knights Families promotion WAW, and a lot of them, especially on the female side, look up to Paige. Paige has obviously done her career. She has been in the impactful moment of it, and obviously Paige and now Saraya. She fully has been one of the biggest British stars, right? Especially on the women's side. Who can we say, British women wise, achieved what Saraya did in the first point? She did it first before the likes of Becky Lynch from Ireland. She did it before the likes of other people as well, before obviously Mariah May. She is one of the biggest, and forever will be the biggest British women's wrestling star. She's done a lot for this country. She's done a lot for this country's women's scene and inspirations for it. I feel like if you go to this generations of women's wrestlers, they will be inspired by Saraya, like how a future generation will be inspired by a Rhea Ripley. People that force against the culture and have that dynamic look that doesn't fit the norm is a big inspiration to a lot of people from across all spectrums of life. On her departure from AEW, particularly, I agree with you in saying it was probably one of the most respectful departures from anyone from AEW, from all sides of it, even Cody, in my personal opinion, as well. I think she looked at that place and saw when there's the likes of Megan Bain waiting, with the likes of Thunder Rosa, Timeless Tony Storm, Harley Cameron, obviously someone that was coming to the company like Mina Shirakawa. I think Saraya looked at it and saw this is a company that a lot of people expect the levels of a Will Ospreay wrestling or a Brian Danielson or Fletcher and Thunder Rosa and Timeless. They expect the ability that she probably didn't think she could provide. She could have provided it in other ways, as I've mentioned there, and I think she still would have been a benefit for the company if staying with it in any role, even just for locker room morale. But to look at the situation and say, you know what, I'm not needed here. I'm not going to take up time. I'm not going to take up a paycheck and leave with that gracefulness. Honestly, I can't say higher words, but just massive, massive respects to Saraya.
Absolutely. So I could not agree more. And it's going to be exciting to see what is next for her. But I do just hope this isn't it for her in wrestling. I do hope she has, some sort of show off in some capacity, send off in some capacity at the very, very least. Fernando says that he doesn't mean to sound negative, but Saraya just doesn't have it anymore. Respect for her coming back from a serious injury. I mean, I don't know. I think she's shown, she didn't have any amazing matches in AEW, but she was reliable and they weren't bad.
I also think, it takes some time to recover from injuries like that. And so she might be able to open up the bag a little bit more, as the kids like to say, as she gets more comfortable continuing to wrestle. And I think what this sounds like more is she wants more opportunity to be in the ring. And she was looking at her place in AEW and the schedule, while it benefits many wrestlers who have been on the stringent 300 dates a year schedule for ages, the Lesnar schedule, I don't necessarily think benefited Saraya compared to others who needed that. I think she actually needed the work to work her way back into rhythm, because that's the way she was trained. That's where Saraya came from in the UK, was working every single day, working every single show. That's what she's used to.
I think the thing as well, though, obviously time is the biggest enemy for anyone, and obviously she had such a time away from wrestling and not really wrestling, and obviously coming back in that short amount of time period. So obviously she's just released her book as well. She comes back and does WAW stuff as well. Obviously she's got her family with like the likes of Ricky Knight Jr., who's got a rising career. I don't think she necessarily wants to wrestle anymore. I mean, she did announce that she wanted to retire as well recently. So I mean,
she said she wants to retire. She wants to have a retirement run, I think she said specifically.
I don't know. I just don't think that. Here's the thing: you can love something for so much, but it can't love you back all the time. And we've seen how the IWC is. Here's the thing: we see how the IWC has reacted to Saraya and all negativity, and it's a lot for any person to take. I think she's great. I think she's a benefit, but maybe she's just like, it was nice to come back, do some moments and all that. But maybe she wants to just do something else. She's got a podcast she's wanting to do. She's launched that as well. Maybe she might be a contributor to Busted Open. Maybe she might be a contributor to somewhere on the Indies here in the UK in some form or passion. But I fully don't expect her to wrestle again if it's not AEW.
Wow.
Maybe a WAW show in the UK, but I don't think she might wrestle. I honestly don't think she'll wrestle again.
Want to bet?
Maybe honestly, I'd be stunned if she didn't wrestle again.
We're going to Vegas in a month, Sully. You want to bet?
Nah, I'm good, bro.
Oh, there we are then. That was a quick 180. But Earl C99 says, good afternoon, gentlemen. Good afternoon to you as well. Saraya and TNA, that is an interesting one, Fernando. A lot of shakeups there right now, and we'll be getting into that a little bit later on. But first, let's talk about Orlando, because the Orlando, I forgot the exact term, but it's basically the people who organize their events have requested an 18 million grant, and this grant would be spent on a WWE either Survivor Series or Saturday night's main event pay-per-view in November, I believe 2026 or 2027, a Royal Rumble in 2028, and then a WrestleMania in Orlando in 2031, plus a UFC show at some point as well. They're claiming that this will bring in $225 million to their local economy. And if that's the case, well, 18 million, that makes a lot of sense. Clark, I want to get your thoughts on this. Do you want WrestleMania to head back to Orlando once again, or are there any other places you'd like to see?
I mean, okay, so for me, look, Orlando can handle it. Like they said, if they get the grant, that's nothing short of delightful. There's more hotels by square foot in Orlando than basically anywhere in the world. They can completely handle it from an infrastructure standpoint. That's a non-issue. I I don't necessarily know that many events if it's totally worth it. I would assume some big events will go there. I don't have an issue with Mania there. There's plenty of cities across the country, I think, that deserve a Mania. I think Indianapolis did an excellent job with the Royal Rumble. I think Indianapolis is a great candidate for a WrestleMania. I think Minneapolis is. I also think London, as has been previously discussed on this very program, would be outstanding. I think if the new stadium is built in Chicago, please and thank you. Yes, do that as soon as we get rid of the mistake on the lake, as far as my hometown's concerned. But the one thing I'm concerned about with this whole Orlando thing, Ben, you lobbed in the UFC at the end, and the Florida State Athletic Commission, I just don't trust. So we're likely going to get 1 or 2 UFC events in Florida a year, but I just don't want a bunch of them, because every single time we head to Florida, there's some sort of controversy with the refereeing or the weigh-ins or the drug testing or whatever it may be, the judging. They can't figure it out. So if we were going to do something like this where it was like a giant weekend and it was everybody, I mean, do that in Vegas or do that in a different New York. Do that somewhere where it makes sense. I'd rather have that in London. London, the Athletic Commission in London can handle judging for mixed martial arts and handle the infrastructure as far as hosting a large WWE event. But please keep UFC events out of Florida until the Athletic Commission figures it out, because that's the worst one in the United States right now. And I had to get that off my chest. I know this is a pro wrestling show, but it's just been bugging me for a while. But
Fair enough.
that's where I'm at on this whole thing.
I mean, we have Kevin over on Instagram saying Toronto needs a WrestleMania. That's another good shout.
I would not mind that. The only thing that I would be worried about for Toronto is the size of arena you could hold it in. I don't think that there's a big enough. I mean, I guess maybe the Sky Dome, but I don't know how many it holds. I think that's only like 60,000. Not only 60,000 sounds so silly, but like 60,000 is a lot of people, but at the same time.
Well, you can do 70,000 at the Rogers Center, the Sky Dome. You can do 70,000.
Yeah. So if you can do 70, then that would be worth it again. I mean, Toronto WrestleMania 18 is one of the hottest crowds in the history of WrestleMania. So I do believe that that's a great shout. I'm not even trying to knock that. For infrastructure, I'm thinking, convention type towns make sense. Orlando, you have Disney World, you have all those hotels to host all of these people coming into town at once. It's a big deal. Toronto can handle that as well. I just think, I don't know. Mostly, I just don't want to see any more UFC cards in Florida.
Fair enough. And I mean, London is being talked about more and more as well now. There's a lot of discussing in the UK Parliament about it too. I do think.
And if we get that Chicago stadium.
2030.
If we get that new stadium in Chicago, we get rid of that mistake on the lake.
Oh, Chicago is going to be getting one in the there as soon as that situation's figured out. Fernando agrees with you as well. I mean, also you mentioned Indianapolis. That is confirmed. That is official. They do have a WrestleMania. It's just not confirmed when they have that WrestleMania just yet. But now let's move on to the next topic. Let's move on to talk a little bit about AEW's newest signing, because Mina Shirakawa has made it official today. She has left World Wonder Ring Stardom and has signed with All Elite Wrestling. She's going to be heading over there. She says AEW have big plans for her, and honestly, I'm really, really excited for this one. Another great addition to AEW's already stacked women's division, so I'm looking forward to it. But what are your thoughts, Sol?
Oh, I'm happy. I'm very, very happy. I love her theme as well. I think it's amazing. I hope Mikey Ruckus doesn't change it, because I think his recent work has been a very big downpour of his usual great stuff. So just don't touch him, Mikey, for the love of God. But Shira Cowan herself is an exceptional wrestler. Obviously well known with the AEW audience through her appearances within the Mariah May and Tony Storm story. Obviously achieved champion as well in Stardom. But like what to do with Mina is very interesting. What to cover her in as a face or a heel is interesting as well. I think she would be too popular and over as well to put her as a heel. So I think a face might be interesting. You could redo a Mariah May and her feud. maybe one of them doesn't see it in the same way, and then you lead that into a big feud. Her against, Mercedes for the TBS title would also be very, very fun as well. Her and Tony with history would be very, very interesting. If you had to throw me the book, I would have Megan Bayne defeat Tony Storm, and then you would have Mina Shirakawa feud with Megan Bayne for the title, which Mina would get. I think that'd be very interesting. I have some people said this is the time to introduce AEW Women's Tag Team Championships. You know my stance on them if I've been fully against them. However, there has been discussions and obviously the whole planning of potentially merging the international with the Continental Championship. Does that leave space for a women's tag team titles? Well, let's look at the potential teams we could have. Well, active teams we have right now, I mean, Penelope Ford and Megan Bayne. I mean, is that really it? Well, there's not really anything you could do at that point. Do you bring back Taiji? Well, we don't know when Tai Conti's coming back. Thunderstorm, which was Tony Storm and Thunder Rosa, as a possibility. You could do Club Venus with Mina Shirakawa and Mariah May. I don't think it's the time for them. Sadly, I just honestly don't, because Tony Khan has to book more than one women's match to build another whole title division, and if he doesn't do that, you can't physically do that. It would take time. I don't think TK will put the time into it. All in all, I think Mina Shirakawa as an AEW Women's Champion or TBS champion would be very entertaining with the potential matchups you can definitely get as well.
I absolutely agree. I do think it's going to be fun, but my stance on the tag team titles, I do agree with you. They need to have a plan, right? They need to have teams lined up and, have a plan for it to be properly introduced. They can't just introduce it and then figure it out. I completely agree there. But I do think we're at a point now in wrestling where if the men have it, so should the women. It's as simple as that.
I'm sorry, Allison. I don't agree with you on that. I just really don't. I'm sorry. I just really don't. You can't just give something because somebody deserves it or feel like it has to exist. There should be
you should build it, but you can build it. You have the talent. So, Brock, you don't just introduce them tomorrow, but build it.
I'm saying you can't or you shouldn't.
What I'm also saying is,
you can.
Is it needed? Do you need to do
Yes, it's needed.
Why?
Because
you can.
Women should have equal opportunity to men at the end of the day. I mean, that's the bottom line of this conversation.
Definition of a feminist. Ask Dave Chappelle.
I don't think it's necessary. You don't need it. If it's nothing that needs to exist on the product, you don't have to introduce it. If we introduce everything so everyone gets something, you'll have too many belts. You won't have enough things for that. You need to do everything. I don't think it's needed.
Why should men have tag team titles then?
Because that's what wrestling has always been. And that's what tag teams have always been.
Oh, because it's what it's always... So this is silly. This is a silly argument. I think both...
How's it a silly argument?
Why do both not deserve tag team title belts? Especially if you build the division in the women's side. What's the difference if it's entertaining
do you honestly think TK is going to do it though? Because I don't. If he only builds one,
I think that's a separate conversation.
Those are two different things. Then that's a qualifier there. You're like, I actually don't believe TK is capable of doing this. Is completely different than women shouldn't have tag team titles. That's right. Those are very
I just don't think it's needed in AEW, and especially when we're going to get into TNAs and what their tag team title picture is like as well, which is non-existent.
But that's got nothing to do with women. Though. That's got to do with booking.
I'm not saying it's against women or anything like that. I'm just saying I don't think it's needed. Just because you think somebody deserves it, I don't think it's needed.
But here's the thing. I'm a big... I don't know. This is my point on all these women's titles and all this, right? I do not think that if you want to be a wrestler, I think you should have an equal opportunity as a man would, right? If you're a woman. So if you want to be a tag team specialist, you have a friend, you've gone up, through wrestling together. I know multiple women's wrestlers who are on the independent scene in tag teams, right? If they then dream of going to WWE one day as a tag team, that's not really, or AEW.
Or even anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult dream compared to a men's one.
Yeah, but the world doesn't work like that. The world doesn't work like that.
It can, though. I think actually the point is that it can. And it probably should. Not just can, it probably should work that way. I think the point.
It should.
This is a completely other conversation we've gone about women's tag team belts in a whole goddamn circle. Every time it comes up, needed, not needed, this and that. Bad booking, poor booking, all of this around. It always goes back in circles. My thing on the stance is, I don't think AEW needs it. Could they do it? Absolutely, if they put the time and effort into it. But I don't think Tony Khan will. I don't think he will. I
But
do not
surely
think
they have the
he will.
talent now where they could start doing, because that women's division is stacked.
Yeah, absolutely, you could. But then you have to think about, you have the women's championship, you have the TBS championship, and if they're only getting one matches a week on a TV show on a Dynamite,
Well, they
and a
need to
Collision,
change that. They need
Well,
to
then-
change that.
But do you think Tony Khan will? Because I don't.
Well, they are. They've been saying they're going to do 2 now a week. I mean, we'll wait and see, but that's what they've
Well,
said.
how many women's matches have we got announced tonight? One tag team. Megan Bayne and Penelope Ford against Thunder Rosa and Tony Storm.
Megan Bane's one of the biggest stars in the company right now, and of course she's announced.
I
That's
agree.
huge.
That could be a
there.
tag team.
It's
Megan
important.
Bayne, Penelope Ford.
I said that. I said that could
Okay.
absolutely.
Yes,
do that.
I know.
But I'm saying as well, you may think somebody deserves something, and in right they should. Should everyone who enters into a job or all that be offered the same opportunity as anyone else, whether it's sex, gender, or whatever? Absolutely, I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
Should anyone be paid on the same level? Depends on what you bring to the company. You're paid the differential on that. I'm also saying as well, you may think you want to have something. I think I should get this. I think I should get that because of opportunities and inclusion and all that. I believe everyone should have the absolute chance, no matter. That's why I've always said tag teams should be intergender, because it's not. It should never be specified as a gender class. It should be allowed for anyone to make a team. You and me, team. Let's go against them. I think that. I don't think you should segregate it by gender, in my personal opinion. I think it should be intersex, intergender, allow anyone to make a team and have fun with that. Because you're adding in more titles, you need more TV time, you need more specific gender teams as well. So if one person gets injured, you've lost a team, you have to put them into a singles division,
But
or
then
you
that's
don't
like
put them off team.
then you have to build another division, the intergender tag division.
No, you would just take them all and put them in the same thing. You put some of the women team you want to put in there, some of the
The
men team.
actual issue with that is there's a lot of people on both sides who there's a lot of people who would be comfortable, but there's a lot of people on both sides of that who wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable in that situation. And that's why both WWE's policy and Tony Khan's own policy for years has been, that's not going to happen in both their companies.
Well, that's not very inclusive then.
Well, it is, because I think
I think there's a difference.
There
between
is a very
seeing
clear
a
difference
man beat
there.
up a woman than seeing 2 women
It's
wrestle.
wrestling.
I do believe that
It's
there is a
wrestling.
difference
It's
there.
not an
Yes,
actual
but
fight.
let's say if somebody on that roster has been
but
beaten up, in a relationship before. Or
It's-
Yeah,
something.
well,
Yeah,
then
that's
you don't.
why-
Then you
that's
don't
the
do the.
reason
Then
why.
then you don't do the tag team. Go be a single star.
This
Then
is-
that's not very inclusive either, is it? I think just have
can't
2
win.
separate
You
sets of
can't win.
tag team titles and give them the time. Build them up and give them the time and attention.
They're not going to
build
give
a
them
women's
the time.
tag team division. There's enough.
I don't think it's needed. Look how bad has
We know.
TNA's knockout. We're going to get onto this obviously with the backstage thing, but how's bad has
Super
TNA's
aware.
knockouts? Look at TNA's knockouts tag team division. They've been terrible for years.
Well, actually, they were fantastic for years, and in the
Really
last
good
couple
for
of
years.
years, they've been bad.
No,
It was
they've
actually,
always
been
for the
down.
majority of their existence, they were actually amazing.
Allison,
It's the last couple
team,
of years it's fallen
Allison, Allison, the last team before they retired was OBD and Eric Young.
ODB.
That's not a good sentiment on how those titles ended
That's
in their first initial run.
Intergender.
We're
there
getting,
you go.
let's end this. Let's end this because we can go about this for circles and years. We'll go around like a goddamn NASCAR track. Let's just get into the final one.
All right.
You can't change my mind. I'm sorry, bro.
Well,
I didn't want to.
Yeah. We do have.
I don't care.
Firstly, Fernando says, I disagree, but understand what you're saying, Soul, but call me crazy. I still have faith in Tony. I have faith in Tony. I think it's just he needs to give the women's division more time, and I think the amount of people who are saying it now, and also I think it's to the point where sponsors are a little bit aware too. So I think they are having their hand forced a little bit, but they are clearly over the last couple of months giving the women more and more time. So I do think finally, long overdue, they are going in the right direction in AEW, and their division right now is absolutely stacked. But let's talk about TNA Wrestling, because we had some major news yesterday there. Anthem have confirmed this. It was first reported by Fightful, but they have now confirmed, Anthem, that Gail Kim was fired from the company, released from the, released from the company and all of that, all her roles and all that. And so was the vice president of content, who was basically in the head of creative role over the past few months, Ariel Shanera. And so were the chief revenue officer, as well as the head of the digital team as well. Meanwhile, Tommy Dreamer, who was very involved in creative, has now been moved over from the creative team to the head of talent relations team instead. So a major reshuffle indeed. Now, in the place of Ariel Shanera, we now have Delirious, who's going to be taking over the booking. He was formerly the head booker in Ring of Honor Wrestling, and he was there for quite a few years. He replaced Gabe. There were, some people didn't like him, other people did. He was very controversial, not necessarily consistent, but he created a massively different product to what TNA is now, which I actually think is the most interesting thing here. But all of these changes have come after Carlos Silva took over as TNA president in February. So it looks like they're going over a complete reshuffle. And I'll quickly say this, right, before I quickly pass it. I don't understand why TNA is reshuffling things every few months, right? Because it feels like every time they're going in the right direction, sales and ratings are going up, and then they make a major change and they go down and they have to climb up again. I think Anthem, quite frankly, have no idea what they're doing. So, what are your thoughts?
Little TNA, baby. Little TNA. Oh, God. How insane is it that this was a company when they started in 2024 with Hard to Kill, that people were like, oh, AEW actually has real serious competition now. Like, there's a lot of drive behind it. There's a lot of support for it, with the likes of Nick Nemeth, the Hardy signing, and then obviously the WWE TNA deal. Like, they've done a lot of good things, and putting the belt on Joe Hendry. But for all the good, there's so many misfires. Scott D'Amore getting fired, bringing back Tessa Blanchard, which is brought a lot of controversy, losing the likes of Jordan Grace and Josh Alexander, and now this. How can you keep shooting yourself in the foot with a gun you load? How do you do that? And isn't it interesting as well that the person that's put into talent relations is Tommy Dreamer, big WWE guy, busted open, which has access to WWE. In my personal opinion, speculatory, I think this is TNA preparing for a WWE takeover. I fully expect this to be TNA is now like the true official like OVW back in the day, or it's going to be NXT Total Nonstop Action or NXT Impact. I think it's going to be a full takeover. I think what this new Anthem regime is wanting to do is put all the people who with the WWE connections in places of power. Obviously, Delirious is not one, to my knowledge, but Dreamer clearly is, and be like, hey, we're making appeals to you. We're getting a lot of your talent over. We're, making ourselves look the best we could for a potential takeover by WWE in some form or capacity. I mean, hey, they're on Netflix. Netflix likes content. This could be content for Netflix in some form. Maybe. But most importantly, Gail Kim, it's a real shame. A real shame for her to get fired. Of course, it's business. People come in and out of jobs. That's fully understandable. But Gail Kim was somebody who was like the TNA knockout. The TNA knockout, along with Awesome Kong. Women inspired to be like Gail Kim, somebody who looked at the WWE's division at the time and said, nah, I want to be a wrestler, and did it. Also, as well, that's not going to be good for morale when people are on Twitter like, what are we doing? Steph Delander tweeted that, and Tasha Steele basically not being happy as well. You have a paper thin women's division as it is that feels like it gets replaced by NXT talent just to bolster the numbers. You cannot keep shooting yourself in the foot with a roster thinner than a rice cake.
I mean, I do agree with that, Soul. I certainly do. One thing I will say, Tommy Dreamer's technically been demoted. He's in a worse position than he was. He was basically leading up the creative before.
It sounded more like a lateral move to me, but I do understand it sounding like a demotion too. But I thought it was more. Well,
lateral. It is, but he was heavily involved in writing it, and now he's been sent over to the talent relations side.
I did think it was technically a lateral move as far as like company.
I think they claim that, but I don't. If you're Tommy Dreamer, I'm
not 100% sure. I don't know any of this. Here's what I'll say on the subject. Been chomping at the bit to talk about it for a while because I find it fascinating. TNA came in at a time when there was nobody else, post WCW, all of that. That's the TNA I grew up with. on Spike TV, no less, a network that at one time showed Monday Night Raw here in the States. Rebrand, Impact, all of this stuff. Scott D'Amore, as many things that Soul mentioned have happened. Right? Even Ben, you mentioned Anthem Sports and whatnot. The way that I look at this, we often look at, as the internet wrestling community, whatever you'd like to call, I'm not calling anybody out, but look at this stuff like day to day and what's going on. This company hasn't gained any market share, no matter what they've thrown at the wall to try to see if it sticks since the early 2000s. If you really think about it, it's established where it's at in the industry. And that is not me being disrespectful. Do not get confused there. My point is they've stayed steady where they're at. And so trying new things, I can kind of understand. I'm not exactly sure what's going on backstage, so I'm not going to speculate about that. But what I would say is you got to try something, because it's been the same product in a lot of ways, the same scale. I mean, I'm not talking about the creative. I'm not talking about what happens in the ring. I'm not talking about how entertained we are as wrestling fans that consume it. I'm talking about it's been the same expectations for a long time, generally over time. And so sometimes you got to make some changes. I'm interested to see how it plays out, and I'm rooting for them because I think TNA deserves a slot in the wrestling industry, especially over here in the States. We need a company like this because there's really great talent over there. There's really, really great talent, and there's really fun matches. And I think it's important that it works. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I don't hate making changes because it has been consistently in the same slot in the wrestling industry for quite some time now.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Clark, that is a very, very fair point. The one counter argument I will make to that point is I don't know if you've ever seen the meme where somebody's mining and then they turn back right before they hit the gold, right?
Right.
Because they got rid of Scott D'Amore when there was more hype around them than there was ever before. The last few couple of months, there's been tons of hype around them again. And now they've made another major change again.
It does feel bizarre. A little bit like they pulled the plug on the grill while it was still cooking.
Yeah. Especially bringing in somebody
that is fair. No, absolutely. But I just wanted to be like, like if you really think about TNA over the years, they've always done the same thing. I don't know. It is a big shakeup, right? You never know.
I mean, I agree with Fernando. Scott saved TNA.
I agree too. I just think I think Scott saved TNA and then wanted to sort of be TNA, and what he's done in Maple Leaf has been excellent, though.
It has been. I mean, I don't know. I think they made a massive mistake getting rid of him. I just don't think he was the yes man they were looking for, really. Captain Charisma says, what if NXT and TNA are fused to do a WCW reboot? I'm going to be honest.
That's really you, Christian. Unless that's really you.
I mean, honestly, I think I'm not entirely sure if WWE, how easy it would be for them to acquire TNA, actually, because of it potentially people arguing it is a monopoly. Especially now they have AEW who could, counter argument on that. But I mean, who knows? That would be, I can't see WWE acquiring them, but TNA is undoubtedly a feeder company for WWE, but I do think it is a separate company. And I think that's, fine. But that does bring us to the end of the show, guys. Thank you very much to Soul. Thank you very much to Clark as well. We will be back same time, same place tomorrow to talk about AEW Dynamite. And of course, make sure to tune in this Sunday to the quiz when it will be an hour earlier in America, but same time in the UK, 8 p.m. UK, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific, to see David and Chaos face off. It's going to be a fun one. Thank you to everybody in the comments, and shout out to Numo12Fly as well. Always great to see you. We will see you guys tomorrow. Bye.